Welcome, everybody. We're happy today to have two folks with us for our Research Talk qualitative conversations. And those individuals who are sharing their wisdom and experience are Dr. Keon Gilbert and Dr. Kristin Black. We'll have each of them introduce themselves in just a bit. They're talking with us today about a course they're teaching at our Qualitative Research Summer Intensive. The course is titled Learning from Marginalized Voices via Community-based Participatory Research, and that course is offered July 30th and 31st. For those of you who will want practical information about the course, we'll have a slide at the end of our conversation that gives you that, where to learn more about it and how to register. I'm Maietta, and president of ResearchTalk. I'm here with my colleagues, Paul Mihas and Jeff Petruzzelli, in addition to our two guest speakers for the day. And I'm going to ask Paul to introduce himself, and then Jeff will do the same, and we'll then turn the conversation to be with Kristin and Keon. So yeah, Paul.
Thanks, Ray. Yeah, I'm Paul Mihas. I'm a qualitative researcher and consultant at the Odum Institute at UNC Chapel Hill. And I've also been with ResearchTalk as a consultant since 2001.
Thanks, Paul.
And I'm Jeff Petruzzelli, a qualitative research specialist with ResearchTalk since 2001.
Good year for ResearchTalk. And then let's just start with introduction. It doesn't matter to us who goes first, either Kristin or Keon. And then after you introduce yourself, we'll start the conversation with a couple of lead-off questions and just let the conversation flow from there.
Yeah,
So yeah, who wants to go?
I can jump in. And so I'm Kristin Black. I am an assistant professor at the UNC Gillings School of Global Public Health. I'm in the departments of maternal child health and health behavior. So I have a joint appointment. And I've been working with ResearchTalk as a consultant for a good while now, particularly helping out with the Qualitative Research Summer Institute and also some of the sessions you hold throughout the year. But I'm also, I would say, I'm a longtime learner through ResearchTalk for like the past, since I was started as a student, so like 15 years or so. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Kristin. Keon.
I am Keon Gilbert. I'm a professor in the College for Public Health and Social Justice at St. Louis University. I also serve as the executive director of the Institute for Healing Justice and Equity. And if that wasn't enough to do, I am also a fellow at the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C.
Oh,
Does it all.
busy man. So when we think about this course and this offering, one of the things we like to lead these conversations off with is folks who sit through this online course for the 2 days and get the experience of co-learning with you. What do you see as if somebody were to say, what am I getting if I take this course? How would you respond? And you can both give responses, just one person, whoever wants to start throughout, we'll just let you flow. So yeah, so what does somebody get if they enroll in the course?
I'm happy to start. So generally what we try to achieve, and it's a lot to do in 2 days, to expose folks who maybe have some experience or a little bit experience or with community-based, community-engaged participatory research, is to really sort of set a foundation of talking about what it is and even what it ain't, and sort of helping people to wrap their heads around general concepts and ideas about the process, about different approaches. And what we've learned over having the opportunity to have taught this a couple of times is people really like examples, and to try to learn from some of those examples of community-based, community-engaged projects, and even understanding that they can look very differently depending on the time, depending on the partners that you're working with. And it's helpful to just give people opportunity to sort of think through some of those foundational concepts and ideas and approaches, and to sort of figure out where they may fit within some of them.
I wanted to follow when you said what it being CBPR is and what it ain't. That second piece, what's an example of something that you encounter for learners and people doing the approach where they kind of are a little off base on what they're thinking it is?
That's a great question. Often I feel when people really try to fit community engagement into projects that where they're where there isn't trust built with community members, where there aren't any relationships or even any time built in to try to build those relationships. I think a lot of people feel that if I have a letter of reference or a letter of support from a community member or someone who's part of a group, that is community engagement. I have engaged the community, a sample of one person, and that definitely is not what it ain't. That's definitely sure. And so when we sort of walk people through sometimes why that doesn't help in some ways, I think, that helps people to understand that there's a much longer process that that can happen and should happen. And it doesn't mean it's 6 months, it doesn't mean that it's 2 years, but just asking people for, as an example, letters of support isn't you truly engaging communities and inviting them to participate.
Yeah. And Kristen, it's also when people kind of invest and say, this is my commitment of my approach, this is not something where a lot of people think of qualitative as I have a field work period and I'll do that field work and thank you. It's much more than that. What people are getting in the course is a picture of that, isn't it?
Yeah, they're really seeing that like it's an investment in time and energy on both ends for the community partners and for you or you as the researchers. And so it's going to start, when I think about it, it starts well beyond just even developing the questions or the reason what the study is going to be about in the first place, and that you're involving community members not in just the recruitment and those that you research, including your research, but that you're including them in true partnership to develop what this project is going to be about. And that's often, if you're in true partnership, that's going to extend beyond the life of a grant, that's going to extend beyond the end of the project. And so you're really thinking about like, how can we truly partner and work in tandem together to do meaningful research? And I think that is so much more rich when you have community involvement or people who have lived experience on the topics that you're working on.
We've been lucky at ResearchTalk and the Odum Institute to have just people you both know, experts in the field, and watch them teach for years now and see the evolution. But another thing that's always intrigues me when I get to observe this course is the skills, of course, are right in the zone of qualitative research, of methodology, all of those things, but they also transfer. And one of the things that I think is so powerful, and it would be great to hear either of you or both of you talk a little bit about lessons of relationship building and, this establishing, maintaining, continuing those, the benefits of that. But that's this just global lesson that comes from the 2 days, whether you're explicitly talking about it or not. So yeah, I just want to hear a little bit of what you will be putting forward in the course that's going to be kind of good lessons for folks, and not just the importance of, but approaches to relationship building. And
Well, I have one thing, if you don't mind, Keon, then I'll hand it right over to you. Is I I think about it as like there's no cookie cutter way to like start these relationships, and some people you really have to approach each partnership that you have in a way that is appropriate for what's going on in that community, what's the context of the work that you're doing, and then what you're trying to achieve. And so, like, really showing people that it's not only just, oh, I have an advisory board and I always have an advisory board on my research project. Yes, that might be work for some projects, but then other ones you might be thinking about other projects, like possibilities of how you may partner with people that are not just them giving you advice on your project. And so really sharing that with folks and showing the differences and the different ways you can approach partnership, I think is like really important, because if you haven't been exposed to that or been involved in it, you really don't know the depth and the variety of ways that partnerships can look when it comes to research, and particularly qualitative research.
beautiful.
Kristen, you actually stole one of my, really important lessons. Which is bad. It's not bad. I mean, there's a part of the course where, it there's a slide. It just kind of says it depends, And, even when I'm teaching at the university or having talks with folks, doing research in general, but in particular, when talking about community engagement, what Kristen highlighted is that it really does depend, and it depends on the context. It depends on the nature of the project. It depends on the kinds of outcomes you're hoping to achieve, what structure the relationships actually start to take. And Kristen also highlighted something else that's really important in terms of you can really get very meaningful products and processes by really just trying to establish relationships that are intended to be built for long term. Many of the issues and challenges are not just one-time issues or challenges. Sometimes we start with a smaller symptom of a very larger problem, while we're trying to sort of just, you know, eat away at those at the larger some of the larger problems by addressing smaller pieces of it. And I think community engagement, community-based participatory research really allows people to sort of start to think about a broader vision for addressing health inequities.
Beautiful. Yeah, Paul, let me invite you into the conversation.
So I'm wondering about how you might address social media and internet-based platforms in the context of CBPR. And I know, of course, we're always kind of thinking about social media, and I'm just wondering how it might fit in here.
I'm happy to start. I think it's a great tool to be able to utilize. Not everyone has the skills or capacity to be able to manage the use of social media, and I think that becomes a challenge, especially when you're working with multi-generational, community groups or agencies, and and maybe they don't have their own social media platform, but that could be part of a product in terms of building some of that presence. And I think it can become really useful in terms of being able to not only market and communicate about the work that folks are doing, because it becomes a great way for people to discover a community group or a project or something that's happening. So I think it can be really, really useful if done well. But again, it sort of takes another level of investment of time, resources, and some people power.
Mhm.
Oh, I didn't know, Kristen, that's pretty good answer. I didn't know you wanted to add anything to that before we invite Jeff into the conversation.
No, it's a solid answer. The only thing I would add is like it could be using social media, particularly groups that have strong presence. It could be a great way to share like findings from work, and so that is reaching a different audience than it may be from other ways, and a more wider audience. And so like using this is a great example of how like an infographic or a short video or something else that you post about your results can be really interesting and engaging, and get people to know about what you're doing and the work that the community group is doing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Jeff, what are you thinking as we're flowing through our conversation today?
Yeah, I was reading through the course description, and there's a line about helping you learn how to balance data collection with community-based goals, and it kind of got me thinking. I would imagine that there could be scenarios where we sort of have these competing goals. As a researcher, you have something you need to get done. Of course, hopefully you have a shared goal with the community of what you're trying to accomplish together. But then the community may also have their own things that they would like to get out of this study, out of this relationship. So just, without giving away the full course, what are some ways that you kind of suggest kind of balance those sometimes competing goals?
Well, you want to go, Keon?
Go ahead.
Okay. It's so funny. I had a student just ask me this week in a talk that I gave about this. And one thing I was telling them is that with my work, I try, and I'm working with a community partner, I'm trying to center the work that they want to do because I know it's like, it's important for them, it's important for the community. And then we talk through that. If there's other goals that I have, like there's other topics I'm interested in, one practice could be like, we're not just thinking about one project. Like if you're really trying to do it in partnership and community, it can be multiple projects. So we feel like figure out how can we stage the work that we do. So maybe we start with the work that they do. And then if they're interested in some of the topics I'm interested in too, typically that's why we connected in the first place. Then we might engage other questions. It could be within that project or it could be a different project. Also, I tell people that you don't have to have one community partner. So you might have a community partnership where you're working with them on their topic and they have no interest in what you're doing for various reasons. And then you work with them on that. And then you might have to find other community partners or people who are interested in that topic and then work with them on a different project. So we're not just like working at one project at a time. Most of us, I'm in public health. That's not what we do. We're doing multiple projects. And it could be with one larger network of folks that we work with, or it could be in different spaces to navigate that. So we don't have to, you don't have to compromise what you want to do as a researcher, but yet I think if you're going to be doing CBPR practices, it really needs to be centered on what the community wants to do and not you pushing your agenda on them.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that question is everyone has an agenda, and sometimes the fullness or full description of that agenda is not always clear. And sometimes when you're working with or just being introduced to a community partner, you may have very similar interests in terms of like you want to fix the healthcare system or you want to increase access, equitable access and utilization of healthcare services, or you want to eliminate diabetes. Like those could be very mutually agreed upon goals. You may have very different approaches about how you want to do that. And that's oftentimes sort of where the balancing act comes into play. And part of Kristin's point of centering the communities, so you may be interested in eliminating diabetes in communities, and the community partner says, well, we have violence in our community. And you're like, wait a minute, that's not what I'm here to talk to you about. They're like, I know, I understand that, but there's an issue in communities that are leading to violence that we feel contributes to diabetes. So we want to fix that part first. And part of understanding that balance is sometimes not all researchers can do this and to sort of take the step back and understand sort of that kind of a picture or thought process or vision for how do you eliminate one issue while addressing another issue first. And that's often really challenging for researchers because you've done all this specific type of training and you were taught you're supposed to have a research agenda, and sometimes that research agenda is not aligned with a community agenda or community practice. And it's not that the two are always sort of competing, it's just that they are just maybe misaligned in terms of how they are oriented. And I think trying to find the balance, if you are willing and you are committed to this as a process for your work, then you can come to that understanding and realization that I can still address diabetes by also addressing some of these intersecting issues and challenges.
Yeah, one of the things that I've loved hearing from folks who have taken this course over the years is that for the community partners involved, they really feel like their own understanding of their agendas, their ability to understand, shape, evolve their agendas, there's so many skills you're giving them. And I was just wondering, partly triggered by something you just said, Keon, in terms of, not everyone's able to kind of carry out this kind of work. What are the types of qualities and or skills that you all will help kind of nurture and that you see that folks should nurture in order to keep this approach as something central to their work over the course of a career? So yeah, are there concrete skills and qualities that you'd like to nurture in researchers just kind of getting up, starting and knowing I'm going to keep CBPR as something core to how I do my work?
I'm sure between the two of us there's lots of things to consider. I'll start with a few. Patience. Everyone's impatient about something, and it's not just on the folks on the research side, but communities are impatient because they also want to see change happen really quickly. Patience, time, consideration, listening differently becomes really important, and learning how to reflect and owning that you may have a particular agenda, but it's okay to have that, but it's more importantly to be authentic and genuine and being able to articulate that with your partners so that you can find mutual agreement, as you're moving through the process. And part of what Kristin mentioned, recognizing that one partner cannot solve or may not be able to solve all of the things that you're interested in, even as a researcher.
Yeah.
Well, I love Keon's list. It's definitely those are key. The things I would add would be like being flexible. So people who don't like change and like to have a plan and stick to it and it be exactly as such, you're gonna have a real hard time doing community work when there's lots of things that might change for various reasons in your control and outside of your control. I also think like you have to think about your work hours differently. If you're a 9 to 5 person, CBPR might not be for you because oftentimes we're having meetings in the evenings and like my work hours might be that, but they might not be able to do this work in the middle of the day. And so having to have those evening meetings or weekend meetings and things of that nature. So you're, that's really important, or it's going to be really difficult for you to engage with certain communities. It depends on what's going on. Also, I think you have to have like, you really have to be self-aware and like emotionally mature, because there's dealing with people that have differing opinions. Folks talk to people differently in different spaces. Like you have to have some tough skin to a certain degree, but then also be willing to be like, okay, maybe this is not about me, or might be some greater issue or context. Like having those personable, like relatable skills to work with people from all types of different backgrounds with all different types of perspectives. Like you really need to have that. And if you don't have it, be willing to develop it.
Beautiful. So I think it was you, Keon, you said at the beginning that having 2 days to teach the course is a lot for 2 days. We're having a much shorter conversation. So I do want to respect the time of both of you and just close with a question that in this case I think is really pertinent is we have so many folks who can only take one course. That's all their budget allows, all their time allows. So they take something that's the most immediate need. But then we have folks who have a little bit of flex and they return for many of the courses, not just that ResearchTalk offers, that Odum offers, of course, the summer intensive we do together. And they're really looking to just be a qualitative person, qualitative geek, kind of interested in all this stuff. So for folks who don't have a CBPR project on slate and don't see it as something they're doing immediately, maybe ever, oh, if someone sits in this course, just kind of, I need to learn this, what are going to be the takeaways that are going to enhance their career as a qualitative scholar, regardless of the amount of practice they wind up having in CBPR?
Well, Ray, when you started, you were mentioning the price, so I was gonna ask if you and Paul and Jeff are gonna take eggs in exchange for the
Well,
course.
actually, now it may extend into beef products too, because bird flu's hitting cows. So we'll be mindful of those exchanges. That's a good idea, Keon. We haven't yet brought it up in our meetings, but we're going to add that to our agenda.
Hey, take it back. We can go to some of the old bartering systems.
Might be
Exactly.
necessary.
That's, so we'll be prepared for whatever may come our way. And it sounds like that's one of the things you get when you learn about CBPR is being prepared. Well, but yeah. But how about takeaways for folks who aren't, deeply into CBPR? That's great.
I'll just maybe mention just a couple of things and turn it over to Kristin.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's a great way for people to understand how do you utilize some of the methods and approaches, that are more traditional. How might they become integrated into a community-based, community-engaged project? There's this myth in that we certainly deal with in the course, and misconception that community engagement is all about qualitative work, and there's a component of that, but there's space for multiple methods and multiple approaches, even clinical trials. And so people don't often recognize that. And so I think it becomes a really great opportunity for people to sort of get a different understanding or reframing of community engagement, community-based research.
Beautiful. Kristin.
Yeah, I would say almost the people who don't have any experience might have an advantage. This would be good for them in terms of their future research, is that they're going to have this knowledge and skills so that when they do start, even before they start the next project, that they start kind of intertwining some of this knowledge into their work, and so that they can set them up for success if they are trying to develop like a new partnership for a research project, and they're not just starting when the RFA comes out and they're like, okay, let's find somebody who wants to work with us. So they'll kind of be like already ready to just like dive into this process by starting to implement some of the things that they'll learn during the course. I think that's going to be really, that'll be really important for those who are just like being qual geeks, which I definitely am, and just trying to figure out like what's the next way that I can innovate and improve upon like the work that I'm doing. This will be a great course for that, because it's going to show you different types of lenses and skills that could be like very influential for any type of project that you might have in the future.
And I will close and let folks know that the other benefit they'll get in taking courses that each of you are teaching in a course on your own at the summer intensive and co-teaching this. But having been lucky enough to witness both of you teaching a range of courses, what folks will get in this course from each of you individually, especially through the way you talk about examples and integrate examples of your stories, is what I think is most important as a methodologist is how do you make decisions, especially Kristin, as you mentioned earlier, at the point where you must be flexible, where, there's at least not just one thing that we couldn't have expected, there's probably 7. So the ability to make decisions in proper context, considering multiple variables at one time, kind of in a moving project, moving and flowing in directions that do make sense, but as I mentioned, couldn't have been predicted. But the two of you are just so wise and able to hold so many variables in mind and make those decisions. So through example at all alone, I think folks will really improve their ability as methods decision makers, but with the specific material that we know is slated, not only in slides, but what you offer. So that's going to be one of the many benefits. So, well, we're really looking forward to people's time in the course and want to thank both of you for your time today. And the summer intensive will be here before we know it. It comes along pretty quickly. So thank you to Paul and to Jeff, and of course to Kristin and Keon.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.